Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're enjoying Ignite. Yes? So I'm Ann Johnson. I am the Corporate Vice President for Cybersecurity Solutions at Microsoft, and I'm having a great week. Cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, I'm just having a whole lot of fun this week. I'm also joined by 5 esteemed panelists, and I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mona Lisa Pinckney. I'm the Senior Director of Governance, Risk, Compliance, Engagement, NGOs for Nike.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Denise Piles, and I'm the Senior Ethics and Compliance Manager at Microsoft.
Hi, I'm Ryan Makababad. Feel free to practice that. I am a Security Program Manager on Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, helping customers to deploy MDATP and learn best practices there.
My name is Amani Sherman. I'm a HCC PhD at the University of Florida, so I study human-centered computing, but I also look at the intersection of usability, accessibility, and security.
The football fan in me has to do this now because you said the University of Florida. Sorry, it's a thing. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Hunter. I'm with Microsoft. I'm a principal program manager inside of the Azure customer experience team, which means I get to ask customers if the stuff we're building actually lets them run their businesses. And sometimes they say yes, and then I have an easy job.
So before we get to the serious topic of our panel, I also want to mention that we have 4 of the Microsoft dinosaurs have joined us for this presentation. Actually, the dinosaurs are reasonably famous, and there are many at Microsoft. It's a very long story, but my dinosaur Cyber is joined by Preppy, the original Thready, by the way, and Sandy. So
Nice.
We're doing well with dino representation in the room also.
And if you have no idea what we're talking about, come to Rob's talk tomorrow afternoon. All will be explained.
Yes, Rob. What time and where? 3:15 here. What time? 3:15 here. Rob, who is the original Thready, for those of you who may know him from Twitter or the Dinosaur Production, is speaking, and he will explain the entire history and the sociology and the psychology of the dinosaurs. But anyway. So let's get started and talk about, we're specific to women on this panel and really wanting to talk about how women in cybersecurity, risks, governance, et cetera, it's not always the easiest career path. And I have perspective, having been in tech for 30 years and security since the year 2000. However, today it is about the panelists. So I am going to just be asking some questions, and then at some point in time we will turn over the panel to audience questions, and I would love if the folks in the back can also run the clock so we can make sure we stay on track. So let's start with Mona Lisa. So I know you have a very long background with financial services, some of the largest financial services companies in the world. You also, incredibly, and I want to read these because I want to make sure I get them right, you are a CISSP, a Certified Information Systems Auditor, I'm spelling that out because some people don't know what a CISA is, and a Certified Information Security Manager, as well as a Certified Project Management Professional. So you've done, yes, there you go. So you've done a lot in your career, have a very esteemed background, but you've also made the investment in getting a lot of different certifications. So talk about, from your perspective, both that journey and that path through financial services now in your current role, but also what drove you to really get those credentials, and then how it is being a woman.
Well, I've been a woman or a girl all my life, so I don't know how much I can share there, but it has been quite a journey, and I tell people, and I'm dating myself, when I first got out of college, there really wasn't a career path in cybersecurity. And so I kind of navigated my way as things changed and evolved. I tried to evolve with it. And so when you think about the certifications, and you think, so I tell people I have 4 certifications, 4 degrees, and I think I'm done, but you never know. and the reason I have so many, one, probably an overachiever, but the main driver was, as a woman and as an African-American woman, every time I tried to go for a particular job, I was always told what I didn't have. You don't have this certification, you don't have this degree. And so I got to a point where I was not gonna let that be an excuse for why they would not hire me or consider me for a promotion. Which is the reason I went back and I said, okay, I'm gonna get everything that I can think of, and then I'll put it in front of them, and then I'll let them tell me why not, right? And so that's really how I got to the point to where I am now in regards to certification and degrees. The other thing I'll say when I talk to people about this field that I absolutely love, by the way, very passionate about it, and even more so now than ever before, because I get excited when things change. I am not one of those people that can do the exact same thing every day. I get bored out of my mind. But I talk to young people and try to get them more involved in this field, and they ask me, like, how have I been able to survive in a male-dominated field? So when you talk about being a woman in this field, I share what I call my 5 Bs. Be relentless, know what you want to do, don't stop until you achieve it. Be fearless. We talked about financial services. I used to work for Ameritrade. Ameritrade got brought up by Toronto Dominion, so now it's TD Ameritrade. I used to work for Wachovia. Wachovia got brought up by Wells Fargo. So you kind of see the trend. So it's like almost every company, up to the last few companies that I worked for, either no longer exists or no longer exists under the name it had when I worked for it. So I had to be fearless. I had to ask questions. I had to be comfortable taking different roles and working outside of my comfort zone. The other one I would say is about be connected. And this is about being a mentor. And then, you know, I was the beneficiary of a mentor. I didn't even know what that meant, but someone told me, oh, so-and-so said he's your mentor. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. It was really good because he was a senior level person within the organization. And I know a lot of what we talk about these last few days about allies. And he was a white male, but he was my first mentor. And I still follow up with him today whenever I get into a bind and trying to figure something out. So I talk about be connected to your profession, be connected to your community, and be connected to your family. And so if you look at my bio, one of the things I do in regards to being connected to my community is I give back. I give back to the community that I grew up in. I give back to my undergraduate college because I feel that it is important to do so. My 4th B is be global. I tell people you no longer compete with people in your hometown, your home state, or even the United States. You are now competing with people all over the world. So you need to think from that perspective. And I certainly recommend if you don't know a foreign language, regardless of what it is, you should try to learn one. And then I talk about being authentic. And this is like the one that's nearest and dearest to me. I am what you see. And at this point in my life, it's hard for me to change who I am. And I chuckle and I say, one thing my grandmother used to tell me growing up, she was like, everybody else is taken, right? And so the only person you should strive to be is yourself. And so those are my 5 Bs that I like to share.
It's exceptional. That's phenomenal. We share one thing in common. I tell people I'm way too old to probably change too much. This is kind of the package. So what you see is what you get. Imani, you are obviously a different career stage, right? You're a PhD candidate, very accomplished in, you know, the study that you're taking on. But I want to ask you a little bit different of a question. I want to talk a little bit about unconscious bias. I talk about it a lot because to survive, I think it's the most survival instinct. I just want to believe everyone has unconscious bias rather than there's any discrete bias out there. But the other thing is about bias in tech. How we think, because with your career, how we think about bias in tech, AI models, and how we prevent against that, and also how we can think about addressing unconscious bias.
Okay, so I want to reference, before I really directly answer your question, I want to reference 2 talks that have already been given. So yesterday, Bryce Johnson, I forget his last name, but he he was a part of the team that created the adaptive controller. So he gave a talk yesterday about designing for people with disabilities and how you need to design with them instead of for them. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in this type of talking about bias in tech to watch that talk because he really talked about how you can include them when you are designing tools that you want them to be able to use. Also, in the pre-day, Kyla, and I can't say her last name, but there's a book that she wrote called With First At, and I think that also speaks to this as being able to work with these people, really wanting to make technology better. So I would, the Humans of IT booth in the hub, to go get the book, it's there. But to answer the question, I think that we have to have, when you're designing, you want to make sure that you have a diverse group of people. But also, just to reference what was said yesterday, design with those individuals. So for me right now, I'm working on a project for people with, who are visually impaired, or if they identify as blind. And so what I've been doing is talking to them, but not just going out and getting their opinion, I also pay them to help me, right? So not doing things for free, also making sure that I talk with them. The other thing is, especially if you're doing anything like AI, machine learning, and you have these algorithms and you're doing things based off of data, also look at where is the data coming from? What is the root of this data? So one of the things that we talk about all the time in our lab, and Kiana is also in my lab, we talk about the data that's used to, the algorithms that are used to determine if an inmate is going to, I guess, go back to jail in a few years. So the recidivism. Thank you, recidivism. So when you look at that, the way that they do those questionnaires and the way that they do those tests, there's bias in that as well, right? So they're basing it off of things that they think will make someone or potentially indicate that someone is going to go back to jail. But the truth is, there are other things that are just a part of the system that may get that person back into jail. So we have to look at, like, what is the root of the data? What is the root of your design? Who are you really looking at when you're doing this? And then also making sure that you're testing whatever it is that you have. A lot of the reasons why we have technology that doesn't work for everybody is because you didn't test it. You didn't even ask us if we liked it or not. And when we gave you feedback, you said no. You kept it out there. Making sure that you're looking at the root of whatever it is that you're doing, especially when it comes to data, where did that data come from? Making sure that you are testing your design, and then also designing with the people that you want to use it. And if we tell you that it doesn't work, talk with us and work with us so that we can make it better.
It's a great answer, and I'll give you, thank you. I love this audience, thank you. I'm serious, I love the way you're being so supportive to the panel. By the way, it's tough being up here, especially for folks who don't do this regularly, so thank you for that feedback. And I'll give you the most basic example I can that I think everyone will understand. If you go into a restroom facility and there's the automatic hand washers and you put your hands under it, and women who wear, like me, who wear black 99.9% of the time, this is an anomaly, they don't always turn on. And I was reading a study about that, and it's because they were never tested with people of color. So just the simplest thing of washing your hands in the restroom with automatic things were never tested with people of color, if you can imagine that. It's just crazy to me that we still talk about this in 2019, but we do. So Denise, you've been at Microsoft about 9 years. Yes. I like to say you go where you're invited, you stay where you're welcome. And so talk to me a little bit about, I came in the Satya era, you were here before the Satya era. Talk to me a little bit about the change in the culture of the company and how really we have moved the journey along and what you saw at the beginning, kind of where you are now that makes you feel welcome and makes you want to stay.
Great, thank you. So let me back up too. Before I came to Microsoft, I worked for a nonprofit company, so I was paid very little. And I was also worked in a mostly male-dominated organization. And who said to me, we're not paying you anymore because you're a woman and you're not going to get anywhere. It's a glass ceiling kind of thing. So when I came to Microsoft 9 years ago, I basically thought I won the lottery because the community, the company is very inclusive. I receive a just wage. I'm paid for my results, and my results are not based on my gender or who I am or what I look like. There was one ad that said, we don't care if you have purple hair, you have your hair spiked, 45 earrings. You know, it doesn't matter what you look like, it matters what you produce. And they actually practice what they say. So that's a thread of consistency of feeling welcome in the sense of receiving a just wage. The other thing is we have 10 inclusive principles. And again, it's not only something on paper, but it's something that's actually lived and practiced. It's principles in the people. So that sense of going and being where we're welcome. What has changed before, in the era before Satya, was this sense of almost a fixed mindset. It was that fear of, oh my gosh, if I mess up, I'm really going to be gone. You know, the performance was based on, you had to produce because if not, you were out in that sense. And there's been a shift of what's called growth mindset for that, that it's okay to fail, learn how to fail fast, learn how to grow, learn how to keep moving forward. And how I feel welcome is being part of teams and colleagues who help me. I have to say I'm a recovering perfectionist, so that sense who help me to learn it's okay to fail, and what can we grow and learn from that. So that's been a real shift. And the other thing about my career is that I have been fortunate to be in members of teams and managers who have been supportive of my career, and the sense of pushing me to other roles has not been because I haven't been welcome, but because I have been welcomed and say, here's an opportunity to stretch and grow. And so those are places that I think have changed over in our culture. We always have opportunities to keep growing and keep learning as a company. I'm very excited and proud to work for Microsoft, and I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. So Ryan, I know a lot about Ryan, but I want to make a comment, and as I ask your question, someone on the panel I did yesterday asked the question about why women aren't more supportive of women. And I said, I view that as almost a generational thing, that women in my generation were so competitive with other women because there was only going to be one woman promoted and it better be us, right? And what I've seen heartens me with like Ryan and folks that are more in her generation, because I see women being much more supportive of women. I see women challenging the boundaries more and just not accepting that there's only going to be one woman pro. They're like, we're all going to go together, right? So you are a huge advocate for mentorship, for allyship. You're a huge advocate for women, for any vulnerable, population, and you're very outspoken about it. So talk to the audience a little bit about how your journey, how you got there, and what you think's really effective that people can do to support others and bring them along.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit about me. I think it says on the panel information that I'm a military veteran. I served in the Army for 8 years, and thank you very much. I still serve in the Army Reserves because of that mentorship. The Army Reserves gives me an opportunity to continue to mentor soldiers directly and coach them and help them to build their lives professionally and personally outside of the Army Reserves. And that's something that became really, really important to me actually while I was deployed in Afghanistan. Because what I saw was that there were people who I wasn't directly responsible for, but that needed guidance, that needed someone to kind of help them along and provide them with information, provide them with their knowledge and experience to really help them learn how to navigate difficult situations. And when you think about being deployed in a combat zone, like those are situations where the decisions that you make could be life or death. Where, Aisha said it really, really awesomely on the pre-day. The decisions that we make, for the most part, unless we're, building products for healthcare or something, right? They're not really going to mean life and death for people. And so that really changes the way that I look at what I'm doing and how can I do my work and do my mission in life to really help people and impact their lives, since the decisions that I'm making today are no longer about life and death, but they could be about how can I help others make their lives better. When I was in Afghanistan, I really had a difficult time because of many different factors, but what it did was it completely broke down my identity, who I knew about who I was. And I suffered through many things. I suffered through actually even suicide and getting to that edge where I felt like there was no other recourse except for just stopping the pain. And I had to work through that. And that's a really difficult thing. If anyone knew me before that, that's a really difficult thing for me to even think about, even today, because I was always like, suicide is selfish, suicide is for the weak. But anyone who knows me knows and knows my story knows that I overcame a lot of challenges, and I continue to overcome challenges because I'm not a weak person. But I don't see suicide as a weakness anymore. What I see it as is a cry for help that I answered. And so for me, going through that and having to rebuild my identity, I never want there to be someone who doesn't have someone to give them a helping hand, whether it's just sharing experience. That's really when I started telling my story, was because I knew that I could just one life, if I just saved one life by sharing my story, no matter how painful it was for me to share that story, then that was worth it. And I have done that. But also realizing what we can accomplish, not just by being a mentor and sharing our experiences, but also being an ally and realizing that there are experiences that we don't have, but we can help people who are having those experiences. And being a sponsor. I don't know exactly how I got into the position where I am, where I'm in a position of power. But that position of power really grants me the opportunity to create opportunities for others and help to open a door so that they could just even get their foot in it and have the opportunity to achieve their goals that they wouldn't otherwise have. And one of the stories that I tell about that is that there was a woman that I worked with who was working in our support center, and she was amazing. She is amazing. She speaks 5 languages, and she is probably one of the best identity people that I've ever met. But she really wanted to be a program manager, and I tried for a year to get her an interview, and I just couldn't do it. So I finally I travel all over, and so I rack up these miles. And so I used some of my miles, and I got her a ticket. I flew her out to Seattle. I had her stay with me, and then I brought her as my +1 to our holiday party so I can start introducing her to all of the people, and I hacked the system, and that's what I did.
I think I remember this party. Yes, you
Yes.
and I were both there.
Yeah. And so I introduced her to all of the people that she needed to meet in order to show them that she deserved to be there. And so all I did was create an opportunity for her to shine, for her to show what she was worth. And now she's a program manager exactly like she wanted to be, and she's rocking it. And so I think that's really why.
Awesome.
Before I come to Laura, Ryan, you told me something at a Halloween party about your sister. May I share it? I don't want to. Okay, I want to respect your privacy.
Feel free.
So Ryan told me something that really bothered me. By the way, since it was the Halloween party last week, so it's still bothering me. That she provides, and she won't say, she provides a home for her sister and her nephew, and her sister is Black. And when Ryan and her sister will go out in public, people will mistake them for a couple and will treat them not great, but they also always treat her sister worse than they treat Ryan. Mm. And again, that's another one of those. We're in 2019, folks. Mm-hmm. It's still bothering me, by the way. So, but thank you for sharing. Thank you, Laura. So we had Be Fearless when we started this conversation, and you were one of the most fearless people I know. You advocate.
Wait, that doesn't work.
You advocate in a very strong way for women and for people of color and for people that are disadvantaged in whatever way. So talk to me a little bit about inclusion. And I want to talk about inclusion in 2 different ways, because inclusion means that everyone has a voice and everyone should be heard. But I also, because you do a lot of your advocacy on Twitter and you do it openly in your name, talk to me about, and for those of you who spend time on Twitter, you know there's a lot of anonymous stuff that happens on Twitter. not always great stuff, but there are some people that, you know, are anonymous and still good. But how does the world react to you? Because you really do put yourself out there. You put yourself out there on your name. You're fearless in your advocating. So talk to me about that experience.
There are days and there are days, is the short version of that. I am super passionate about it, as you mentioned, and the reason for that is, much like experiences that Ryan has had, I find that for as many situations as I am the woman in IT who maybe could stand or could benefit from the help of that white male ally, I find that there are other intersections of my life where I am the most powerful voice in the room. I am an older person. I am Caucasian. I present as CIS gendered. I am mostly straight. I am relatively well-to-do. I am relatively highly leveled inside of my company. And so there are any number of rooms, either physical or virtual, where I am the loudest voice in the room. And I think my passion around this is honestly a reaction to my own journey, because if I'm being very transparent, when I was younger, because of the generational thing that Anne mentions, when I was younger, I had that very competitive thing. I wasn't kind to women around me. I was very competitive to women around me. I had allergic responses to being involved in women in IT spaces. I don't want to be a part of this women in IT group. I just want to be known as being great at my job. And it took some kind of self-introspection to realize that another name for that is I got mine feminism. And I realized that as the person who has the power in any number of different spaces, if I am not standing up for the people who don't have power, then what am I doing with my life, quite frankly? And so that's why I'm very passionate about that. In terms of the reaction that I get about that, there are some really stupid people on the internet, and those are the days where I'm very happy to have my male allies, because I have any number of male allies who will stand up on the Twitter machine and say, you know, you're explaining to her how to do her job, right? And in situations like that, I refer to it as weaponizing my male allies. I deploy them as tactical nuclear weapons. Because in situations like that, it's good to recognize that, yes, it can be more powerful to have the white male say that rather than the woman say that. And so it becomes very contextual, and it becomes a matter of picking your situations and knowing when you should be the one screaming versus saying, Carmen, go.
That's a good choice, too. I don't know if he's in the room. So thank you, Laura. So Laura and I had an experience with a brilliant male ally who was actually opening roles on his team. And he sent both of us the job description and said, I want this to be more inclusive, so more than, you know, the average white man applies. Can you please help me with the language? We were thrilled. There's somebody who says, look, please help me rewrite this so a wide spectrum of people will apply. So there are a lot of tremendous allies, and I'm the same place Laura is. I feel privileged, right? Being a white female, cisgender, reasonably affluent, in a fairly decent position at Microsoft, and it is a position of privilege, and I view it as my responsibility and obligation to bring people along. So with that being said, we have about 15 minutes to take questions. I would love, you have this I'm fortunate to share a stage. You have this incredibly accomplished group of folks sitting next to me. Would love to take questions from the audience, and I see a mic right here. So who will be the brave first person?
Yay!
You can ask a dinosaur question if that's easy to break the ice.
I'm not trying to be rude, by the way, but those lights are blinding.
I'm aware.
I actually wrote my question down because I was going to be nervous. My name is Steph, by the way. For someone who wants to be a CISO, which is a Chief Information Security Officer, in the future, but is currently allergic to office politics, what advice would you give me? How can I learn how to speak passive aggression? And how can I learn to navigate mostly white male spaces? and do this without losing myself and my authenticity.
So I'm going to let the panel answer rather than say that I'm allergic to passive-aggressive behavior. But I think that maybe Mona Lisa or Denise could take a run at that first.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I grew up in the South, lived on the East Coast, relocated to the Pacific Northwest, and it has been very difficult for me dealing with passive-aggressive behavior. In the South, you say what you mean and you mean what you say. You try not to be too blunt in regards to offending people. So I can't really give you any tips on that. What I can say is about not losing yourself, and this is what I was talking about, one of my 5 Bs, is to be authentic. And I think you can be who you are and still be able to succeed in the field that you desire. So I would say office politics, you just need to know your environment and need to know what the safe words are and have some people around you that can help you so that if you are kind of moving in a direction that may be offensive to people, that person will let you know. But that's about the best I can give you. I have a colleague who's actually here in the audience, and we have this relationship where if I say something, he's like, oh, you need to stop, then he will let me know, and I respect him enough to listen, and vice versa, so it's reciprocal. And so I would say setting up those kind of relationships might be good. The passive-aggressive, I'm still dealing with that myself.
I would say the same thing. For me, in my former role was in cybersecurity, and I had meetings with the Chief Information Security Officer all the time and leadership in the sense of being in the room and being present and being authentic and real. I would be the only woman in the room or another woman who was my boss in the room with us. And the sense of you see the office politics going on or that, and the sense of being real and being honest and genuine, and knowing I'm originally from Kentucky, so I'm sort of almost in the South. And that sense of I don't put up with the BS or call it as I see it, and the sense, but to keep showing up at the table with them and to be in the room and to sit and to look at them and over time, I mean, I'm not a senior level executive, but over time I had trustworthy and credibility as a trusted person in the room at the table because I'm willing to be there and to be present and to call it as I see it in a very respectful way, but also not to jump into that either. And so my advice would be just to keep showing up at the table who you are as an authentic person and know where you want to go and to keep working at that and find your allies that can advocate for you in that process.
Thank you. Oh, you said you were.
Thank you.
Just kidding. You said
Yeah, can I
Please.
add on to that? So I'm not a CISO, but I will say that coming from the military and also growing up in foster care, there were a couple of skills that I learned. One, in the military, you don't, there's a lot of politics, but you're not allowed to speak your mind, depending on how much rank you got anyway. And you know, I got to a certain point in my career where I was a leader of soldiers. And when I came to Microsoft and people weren't where they said they would be at the time they specified they would be there, and you know, they didn't say what they meant. They you know, they would tell me that, you know, this project would be done at a certain time, and then at that time they would tell me it slipped for, you know, another week or something, and I would say, hey, why didn't you just tell me? But what I found actually, I used to have people read my correspondence before I would send it because I was too blunt in my correspondence. But so what the things that I learned in my transition from the military to the corporate life and also from being in foster care is that, one, I need to read my audience. I need to understand how they're receiving me so that even when I do say something that might come across as offensive or antagonizing them, or they start behaving in a way that is passive aggressive, that I need to understand what their perspective is And in understanding what their perspective is, I'm able to actually have that conversation with them that says, hey, you know what, I think that how you received me is this way, and I would like to work with you to work past that. And that has, for the most part, worked for me. There are some instances that it hasn't, but really trying to understand and being proactive and deliberate in trying to understand other people's perspectives and not dismissing it has been a skill that has helped me to get past some of that passive aggressiveness.
So I'm going to keep my comment brief just so we can get to another question. Look, be authentic. The best advice I can give you is you only get one you. Bring your authentic self, but do understand your boundaries and have that person that is willing to push you back into those boundaries. Trust me, I'm a blunt force object 'cause I'm a New Yorker. I live in Seattle. It's not the best fit, but I do have people that I trust in my life who will say, hey, chill. You need to just slow down, or you need to not be, not just because you only have a hammer doesn't mean everything's a nail. Right. And you need to have that person, but bring your authentic self. That is the best advice I can give you, because you only get one you, and you really do need to present as you.
As a Philadelphian, and as the only person in any room who's tougher than me.
I'm a teddy bear. Next.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really exciting to see all women panelists in a tech conference like this. Thank you for inspiring us. My question is, as women leaders in a leading company, how do you all take steps to educate your counterparts, your partners, or anybody in your organization? It could be men and women, to get through or not present unconscious bias and actually mentor and help women.
So this actually came up during our pre-date discussion as well. The thing that is very interesting to me is, as someone who is interested in and who is so passionate about inclusivity topics, I need to check myself, and I need to remind myself that not everyone has the same perspective that I do. There's this thing called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge means that when you know a thing, or when you are passionate about a thing, it can be difficult to imagine someone else who is not. And that in and of itself can hinder your ability to get your message across. So for example, I have a global team. I have teammates from Israel. I have teammates from the Midwestern United States. And we got into a conversation during June, during Pride Month, about transgendered employees and about uses of pronouns. And one of my teammates said, Laura, I don't understand. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm not saying I don't like, I'm not saying I don't like degendered pronouns. I am saying I don't understand, because this is not a part of my life. But I want to, because I manage people who don't look like me. And so it forced me to take a step back, because I had this moment of, what do you mean you don't understand? Oh. So it was a teaching moment for me as much as anyone else. And I think being able to meet people where they are, and being able to do so without judgment. There's a version of that conversation where I could have been very judgmental of this person and said, oh, well, you're being biased and you're being this and that. No, they didn't understand. It wasn't something that was a part of their life. And it became an opportunity for me to educate them. And that was amazing.
Yeah. And one of the things I would add to that is to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Think about most respectful intent. So sometimes people say things, do things, and they really, honestly do not realize that they're being offensive, that they're being biased. And so I think when we come to the table, we need to give grace, because we want grace, right? And so when you think about that and think about the work environment, as you're talking to people, sometimes people really are interested in hearing what you have to say. If they say something that's offensive and you don't say that it's offensive, then what do you think they'll do? They'll continue to do that because they'll think it's okay. But it's the way that you approach them and be able to say, well, you know what, thank you for that, but let me tell you what I heard. Let me tell you how I received this. Let me tell you how I feel being a person of color from this part of the United States, right? So it's a lot about dialogue. And that's one of the things that I've been hearing over and over, is that we've gotten to a point where we don't actually listen to each other anymore. It's like, I have my opinion, you have your opinion, and there's no negotiation. Where if we actually listen to people and listen to them intently, and then give them the respect of being able to present what they mean, then I think that'll make it a better situation for all of us.
Yeah, I think and I'll keep this again brief so we can get to one more question, but I think the assume best intent, right? That's, and then educate. And people will ask. If you give them that space, if you don't attack them, but you give them the space and say, you know, let's talk about what you said and why it was offensive to me, or what you said and how it could have been said differently. I find that works really well, because I do believe most people have good intent. They just say something because they simply just they have no frame of reference. They live in the world they know, right? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just, sorry, I just wanted to ask you all.
Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
So, and I'm hoping that somebody else can answer this as well, because some people aren't really good with being direct, right? So sometimes something happens and you may not be comfortable going to your boss and saying something to them directly. So I'm not in the corporate world, so I'm not sure if, like, you know, what you would do in that case if you're not comfortable actually going and saying something.
To your boss or to a peer?
To a peer, to whoever has, you know, done something or, you know, is doing something that that has made you uncomfortable.
I typically find an ally. If I'm not comfortable having the conversation,
Absolutely.
I find somebody who's maybe a peer to that person, or I'll find an ally to go have that conversation. That's the best way.
I'll also diffuse that conversation or make that conversation safer. I statements are your best friend. When I hear, I feel.
That way, you're taking them off the defensive. Instead of saying you did, you're saying, oh, what I heard versus you said. So I statements are great because you're taking all the responsibility for it. Oh, we had one more question, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Great conversation, and I love your voice. I'm looking forward to your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I had two questions, but I'm going to ask one because. So, sponsors versus mentors. I heard one anecdotal. Hey, I found a sponsor, right, or a mentor. What is a good way to find them if you don't meet them on the way?
I actually use social media myself. I do a lot of mentorship on LinkedIn, and I encourage people to go on there. Also Twitter. There are a lot of people, including a lot of the folks that are on this panel, who will answer questions if you ask them. I have folks I have on my LinkedIn profile, and I encourage you, if you want to be a mentor for others as well, to do so on your profile as well. But I have mentorship on my profile, and if you look on my messages, message after message are from my mentees that say, hey, you know, I have a question about this. I'm thinking about this kind of role. How do I articulate that in my resume? Stuff like that. So those are some ways. Other ways, in meetup groups, you can find, if you have a specific topic that you're interested in and you want to find a mentor in that topic, a lot of times you can find them at meetup groups, and you can get them big or small meetup groups. So that's another example. If you're going through a college, there's often clubs, and those clubs will have sponsors. Talking to professors or people who are in that industry, use whatever avenue that you can. Networking is one of your best friends. And I know that as an introvert, that's really hard for me to say because networking is very scary. But that's what I would say is you can find it that way. And just be conscientious of their time.
I just want to add, I ditto everything that Ryan has said, but keep in mind that your mentor doesn't actually have to look like you. So I know when I was first looking for a mentor, I was looking for somebody that looked just like me. And of course, that was hard. And somebody told me, look, they don't have to look like you. They just have to be someone that actually wants to help you grow. And so try to keep that in mind, too. There are people who are around you who want to help you. And just because they don't look like you doesn't mean that they can't be your mentor.
Same thing for sponsors. You mentioned sponsors. You want that person who's advocating on your behalf when you're not in the room. and even when you are in the room. And that's the difference between having a mentor and a sponsor. You want both of those. You want a coach, too. And that's the person that's going to kick your butt unequivocally. You want to try to surround yourself with all three of those people. Any final thoughts from the panelists before we wrap?
My thought, or just want to say as we wrap, is that you only get so many ticks on the clock in life to do what we're meant to do and to do the work we want to do and the dreams we want to live. So take every advantage you can of the time we have to go after what you want. If you want to be a CISO or if you want to be the best program manager or whatever you want to do. And know that there are a lot of advocates out there for you to help you get there, and listen to that and let go of anyone that tries to trip you up or knock you down or get in the way, because there's nobody else on this world like you. And we don't want to miss out on your gifts or talents.
And I would say quickly is understand what your passion is. What are you passionate about? What do you want to do versus what someone else wants you to do? And I'm a firm believer, if you understand your passion and you follow your passion, you can only be successful because you're putting a lot of time into it.
Yeah.
Excellent. My last piece of advice to you is don't let anyone rent space in your head for free. By the way, we all do it. And it tends to be the negative space. I want to thank the panelists for making the time. I want to thank our guests for coming in, and thank all of you.